It's not to say to ignore tradition, but it's to completely make a clean break with convention. So his three reminders to architects are these images of these massive grain silos in Montreal. Kind of an odd thing for a lot of architects to consider grain silos in the New World as kind of the model of architecture and civilization for the future. But Corbusier had a very specific eye towards dealing with the kinds of things that he was picking out when he was illustrating his notions about, let's say, scale, proportion, design, cultural direction. And the grain silos, which are incredibly massive and somehow also poetic buildings, are using the same proportional tools and scales as Greek temples. So the structures here, for example, these match identically the kinds of details that are evident in the three classical Greek proportioning systems, except that they tend to be about this big, and the buildings, of course, are in a completely different sense of proportion. So what he's also alluding to is the fact that we need to think in completely different kinds of proportional scales. And when we look at a digital culture as something which is connecting not just people, but entire societies, cultures, traditions, global zones, and creating a vocabulary which can be shared by people around the entire world, we are in a situation which kind of matches this kind of shift of scale, where our perception also has to deal with a completely different kind of universal idea, also about communication. And of course, we have this problem about the English language, which is perhaps one of the most restrictive elements in establishing that kind of universal vocabulary of let's say, design, thought, and communication. So part of this idea of kind of going beyond the future and creating this new vocabulary is also to maybe exclude traditional forms of linguistics and language, and looking at what kinds of coding can we establish in order to create a kind of communication which isn't so Anglo-dependent. It's kind of a problem, and I think it's something which we also need to think about within a curriculum which is dealing with media and communication. Then, of course, there is this whole notion of collaboration as one of the key elements and proponents of, I suppose, developing a new form of digital culture and maybe a new form of media tradition. In our work, not just with the festival, but also as artists and activists, perhaps, and other types, we all talk about platforms of collaboration, digital simultaneity, the collaborative publication. The tools that we develop are all about working together and of course breaking these kinds of boundaries of language and talk. Now, I don't know, can you see that picture at all up there? Imagine, is it possible maybe to turn some of these lights down? Because this this image is supposed to be Man Ray's beautiful photograph of dust breeding on Duchamp's large glass. And one can debate, yeah, that's maybe a little bit better. It's a resolution thing we have to sort of fix for the beamer. But we often think about Duchamp as of course being a media artist. I mean, he's the perhaps the fairy godfather of media art in a certain